Okay, so we're ready to go. Where is everybody? We've got a few people in the room already, so more people will join as we need to. So welcome to the Team DataFam Tableau User Group meeting number 1. This is the very first meeting. This Tableau User Group, if I can get my slide to progress. So this tag's all about the more than the audience. So we will meet at very irregular times. Meeting is arranged to match the presenter. So whenever the presenter is available, we'll have a tug. At the moment, I'm trying to limit that to 1 a week. But all tugs are recorded. It's so we can get the presenter to present to a wider audience. And obviously the recording is going to be on YouTube and on the podcast as well. So check out the schedule on the user groups webpage, usergroups.tableau.com. There's 14 sessions scheduled so far, and more will come as we go through. And if you need more information, email at team.datafam@gmail.com. Today we have Felicia presenting, and the presentation is called Binary Parameters, a New Multi-Value Parameter Approach. Felicia is a Tableau visionary to begin with, which is awesome, and also the Associate Director of Analytics Solutions at Playfair Data. So she does a lot of Tableau stuff. I've known Felicia for years on Reddit, and she's answered in some Reddit questions and had a Reddit project there as well for a while of answering questions on Reddit. And Reddit's one of the places where you can go to actually answer your questions, help other people get more experience, etc. And obviously right down the bottom, she goes by the handle of Graph Hopper online, and also at the Kansas City User Group. So over to you for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Chris. I am so excited to be your first presenter. I'm going to share my screen now. I'm going to do entire screen. And let's go into the deck. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. So I'll be talking to you today about binary parameters. And this is a brand new approach that I've developed along with my coworker, Juan Carlos Guzman at Playfair. If you're already familiar with multi-select parameters or want a challenge, you're welcome to open up the Workout Wednesday Week 9 challenge for 2025 while you listen to me and attempt to do it while you listen to the tutorial. I wonder if I can hide this. Let's hide that. Okay. So let's start out by talking about parameters in Tableau. They're a tool that let our users make inputs into our Tableau dashboards. And they're incredibly flexible. So they'll put whatever value that user puts into the parameter, and it will populate a column of data with that value repeating over and over and over consistently for every single row in all of your data sets. Then that value can be used on a shelf, your row shelf, your column shelf, your marks cards. It can be referenced in calculations, headers, tooltips. It's an incredibly powerful tool. They're highly customizable. You can use any kind of data type, including spatial objects, and they can be triggered directly through user controls or by actions with clicks or hovers. And often, we just leave them completely in the background. The user never knows they're there, and they're creating UX interactivity to aid the user experience. There's one critical limitation. Parameters can only store one value at a time. So, why are we going to force a parameter to hold multiple values? Wouldn't it be easier to use a multi-select filter or maybe a set instead? The problem with those is that they're limited to the values inside of your data source. With parameters, we can use concepts like your metadata, the column names, the measure names, colors, size, pagination. All of these abstract concepts can be entered using a parameter. They're also excellent for bridging unrelated data sources. Let's say you want to put a date into all of your unconnected data. Parameters are a great way to do that. And then they are applied in some situations where filters have to obey order of operations. So there are existing approaches for multi-select parameters. Here's a common overview to that if you've never seen it before. Generally, there's a value and a delimiter, and we follow that pattern. using contains and replace to manipulate it. So here we have our multi-select parameter. It has our values separated with pipe delimiters. Then the contains function checks whether that matching value is inside the parameter or not. So we can see that central is in the parameter, west is not. And our parameter input will toggle whether that value is inside or outside. So with central, our parameter input removes central from our parameter. With west, it adds it in. Binary parameters work similarly, but here we're using position instead of including the true value in the parameter. So this is giving us the same information as that other mockup, but here central is our first position. So it's a 1 and it's included. East is the second, and then south and west are the third and fourth position. With our parameter, we're using a string parameter, not an int. That makes our leading zeros behave a little bit better. And I also found that the string functions were a little bit easier to manipulate in that parameter math. With our current value, we're going to be using mid to isolate the relevant character. So to look at that index value, which can be populated using index or maybe a else if statement that hard codes the values, or maybe a lookup table in your data model. We can populate that index field any number of ways, but once we have that character position, we feed it into mid to isolate the relevant value. And then our parameter input will flip that value to the opposite and turn it over. So if we look at central, instead of 1, 1, 0, 0, that first 1 is flipped to a 0, and we get 0, 1, 0, 0. Here are what our calculations look like. That current value function, like I said before, we're using mid. We're taking the string of the parameter, finding the position, and taking one character. Our parameter input starts on the left side of the string, has a function to change the value in the middle, and then takes the characters to the right of our character of interest and concatenates all three of those strings. And then finally, for the specific use case I developed it for, it was really useful to have a way to count how many ones are in that binary parameter. So if you find yourself needing to do that, the easiest way we found was to use replace to take out all of the zeros and then define the length of the remaining string, which is going to be the number of ones left. Comparing the techniques, delimiter techniques are very flexible. So you're not locked into using the same set of values. So that's really nice when you have maybe a set of names that could change as we get new customers and other customers leave us. Whereas a binary is very fixed and rigid. So if you have some columns that you always want to appear in the same order, so the use case we developed this for was a dynamic table where we had some revenue metrics followed by some attendance metrics and then performance metrics. And we always wanted them to appear within those groups and within the same orders. Your binary parameter will be fixed in length and fixed in order. So those revenue metrics would always be like the first three if you want it to behave like that. So that's a big overview. There are so many ways to expand this concept, and I think we're still early days with this. So if you develop a new technique, I want to hear about it. I think something that could be interesting is to dynamically swap between different dimensions or swap between different values using index, maybe changing the order to change the placement. You're not limited to 2. So in the Workout Wednesday challenge, one of the bonus challenges was to use 3 or more buckets. And so that can be done pretty easily by swapping out 0 and 1 for 0 through 9 or A through Z. Any single character will work in this technique. And finally, I think we can do a lot with that middle section of our parameter input calculation. So we can change it to only allow users to have 5 ones in the equation and start returning zeros after that. It's really bounded by your creativity. So I'd love to see what you develop. out of the Workout Wednesday exercise, we actually had one participant develop a technique where they used n to the index and used an integer parameter instead of a string parameter, basically adding values in by multiplying and then taking values out by dividing by that n to the integer value. It was a really interesting technique. I don't fully understand it, but I think it's a lot truer to the nature of binary math. And I think it could be expanded upon. So please, if you're able to apply this in your work and create something new, I'd love to hear about it. I'm going to wrap up by showing you the Workout Wednesday challenge. We're going to walk you through it now. So I'm going to swap my screen over to my workbook. Now, I've already solved it just because we always know with live demonstrations, things can go awry. But I'm going to start from scratch and show you the process. If you have your computer with you, feel free to follow along. I'm going to create a parameter. We're going to call this binary parameter 3. Because I've done this 3 times. And we're going to make it a string parameter. I'm going to enter a series of 1s and 0s. And we're going to mark that OK. Let's show our parameter on the sheet. And now let's build a bar chart. I'm going to use subcategory, and I'm going to use sales. And this is just using a slimmed down version of Superstore. I just hid the irrelevant fields. Let's go ahead and sort this and hide our header. There we go. We've got a simple bar chart and a parameter. Next, let's look at position. Oh, I wanted a calculation, not a parameter. Let's do that again. For position, I'm going to be lazy and use index. You're welcome to use hard coding or a lookup table. There are a lot of ways to set this. Index is probably the fastest. Let me make this bigger. All right, now let's put this into the view. Let's check our values. Yep, so we're going 1 through 17. It's looking pretty good. And next, I'm going to check that position. I'm just calling it position 3 because I've done this a couple times. You can name this whatever you'd like. And what we're trying to do here is check the character at the relevant position for each subcategory. I'm going to use our function mid. And our string is going to be our binary parameter. And the start is going to be the position that the binary parameter occurs at, which is going to be determined by our index function. All right. This is going to be our character isolation calculation. So I'm going to put that together, and then let's pull it into our table. All right, that's not quite right. I did something wrong. Let's check it. I think I forgot to determine our length. So we're going to set our length to 1. Let's make this big. All right, so this final argument is going to return a string of length 1. Let's hit OK. There we go. I need to make this parameter a little bit longer. So we need 4 more characters. There we go. Always good to check our work as we go. This parameter, or this position 3 calculation, is now going to go on color. And it's going to tell us which which bucket each subcategory belongs to. So our orange bars are included, our blue bars are excluded. Next, we're going to do the tricky part, and this is going to be our parameter input calculation. We call it parameter input 3. And what this calculation is going to do, it's going to change the binary parameter 3 value when we click on something. We're going to start with the left side of things. We want to pull everything before our character of interest. I'm going to pull from binary parameter 3. I want to pull our index 2 minus 1. So it's going to take everything before the character of interest. So we should see a string of increasing length, starting with 0 characters and going all the way up to 16. So let's check our work and then keep going after that. All right, this is looking pretty good. So we're going to add another part to it. Oh, let's make this a little bit bigger. Next, I'm going to concatenate something. I'm going to add a placeholder right now for that changeable string. Let's put an X in for the value that we want to change and move on to the third section because that's easier. So I'm going to start from the right this time. I'm going to be looking at binary parameter 3. And we're going to look at 17 minus index. And now what we're doing is we're going to work from the right. So we know our string is 17 characters long. And I'm going to subtract the position of our character of interest from that. And let's see what this looks like. Okay. This is looking pretty good. So our first one starts with the character of interest. Our last value ends with the character of interest. We're looking good. Let's work on the middle. Now here, if our character of interest is a 1, we want to make it a 0. If it's a 0, we want to make it a 1. So let's use an if statement. So if position 3 equals to 1, then 0, else 1. Let's make that a string 1, end. Okay. All right, I hope this is readable for everyone. Let's go ahead and apply that. Okay, this looks pretty good to me. Let's put the bow on it by creating a parameter action. I'm going to create a new parameter action called parameter 3. Our target parameter is going to be binary parameter 3. Our source field is going to be parameter input 3. So we're going to be feeding that calculation we just made into our parameter whenever it is clicked. Now let's see if it works. So when I click this bar, it should change from blue to orange. All right, looks like we're working. Now when I click on an orange bar, it should change to blue. And that's binary parameters in action. If you're interested in a slightly more complicated use case, you can go to Playfair Data. And in that tutorial, Juan Carlos and I walk you through our original use case of a dynamic table. It's a little convoluted for a Workout Wednesday or a live demo, but it's a second, very different use case where we're using some metadata instead of values. So love for you to do that. And if you have an application for this, I'd love to hear about it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Before you stop sharing your screen,
yeah.
just go back to the workbook. So I think what you're really saying as well is you can get rid of, on the row shelf, you can get rid of index 2, position 3, parameter input 3,
Yeah.
and really you've just got a graph where you can highlight bars just by clicking on them.
Absolutely.
So select or deselect bars, or highlight them just by clicking on them.
Oh, we do need to use.
Sorry, I broke it.
We do need to put parameter index 3 somewhere so that it goes into the action, but we can keep it on the details shelf and it should still work.
Sorry, I broke it for you.
It works in theory. It should do it.
Yeah.
Live demos, you know the nature.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's not just color. This can change in a calculation, in a filter. This position 3 and parameter 3 input can be used on any of the shelves Tableau offers us.
To do anything really.
Mm-hmm.
The user can then do whatever they need to based on that parameter.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's stop sharing. All right.
I'll go back to mine. Okay, so here's all Felicia's contact details: LinkedIn, X, Blue Sky, Tableau Public. She's everywhere. We didn't put up Reddit, but that's okay. Reddit and Discord. You're on Discord as well sometimes?
I don't have Discord. I do have Slack. So.
Okay, cool. Yep. And I know I've lost my screen, but is there any question in the chat as we're going through? Apart from my questions, that's easy.
All right. Well, if you're watching this recording and you have a question, feel free to DM me on Blue Sky, Reddit, email me. I love answering Tableau questions, so feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And leading into presenting at Tableau conference as well.
I sure will. Oh, Wendy dropped in the chat that she would love to know more about use cases. I think this can work in any place you would use a set. So if we're talking about scenario planning, where you want to see, scenario A, scenario B, scenario 3. Oh, I'm mixing up numbers and letters. A, B, and C. You can flag different, maybe team assignments or, I can't think of.
Yeah.
Right. Jacob, thanks for joining us. Even if it's late, that's all good.
It's early for him. It's okay. He's the same time zone as me. But yeah, it's sort of, I was interested in the approach because in a way, I don't like when people say, I can have a multi-value parameter, because that's just not possible, which is what you said to begin with. But you've sort of made a parameter act more like a set, but it's not linked to a dimension, which is the beauty of a parameter. So that opens up the flexibility to do a lot more things than what you can't do with a set. You're sort of doing the same thing, but it's in a parameter, so it doesn't have the set limitations. It doesn't have the data source limitations, as you were explaining at the start.
Thank you so much. That brought my brain back. The two use cases where I've applied this to client work are, the first one is when we're working with metadata. So, we were working specifically with metric names and choosing which metrics to populate. So then we had a lot of hard coding involved with setting those positions. And then we could use calculations to change both the table headers and then the values that appeared in the table. The second situation is one with related data sources with those outer sections of the overlap being very full. So there were dates in the first data set that weren't in the second, and dates in the second that weren't in the first, and we needed them to filter in unison. So if we used a traditional filter, we would be missing some of the available dates. So we had to do it via parameter. And in that case, we needed to make sure there was a relevant value. So it's a slightly different tutorial. But if we needed multiple dates from something with limited overlap, I think this would be a good application.
Yeah, very cool. Very flexible.
Yeah, thank you.
And at TC, obviously, your presentation is a little bit different. Relationships versus joins versus blends, which is always an interesting topic. Twice, both if you're going to TC on stage 7 and stage 8, different days. A lot of sessions are duplicated at TC this year, so you can actually get to them. Like, you don't have to have one time. You can do both, either, whichever.
Thank you. I actually didn't know the times for sure, so thank you so much for checking.
So I should have put a little star on there. They are subject to change, but that's what it
They're
is at the moment.
definitely subject to change.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're going to San Diego, if you're not going to San Diego, then sign up for TC because it's free. If you are going to San Diego, if you register now, you can save $300. Those are the dates. San Diego. Look at the sessions. Someone was talking on LinkedIn this morning. They've tagged all their sessions, and they've got to be in like 5 sessions at the same time. typical TC, what do you do? Which is probably one of the reasons for this tug is saying if there's a presenter, so if you are presenting at TC, like Felicia, and your session is not recorded, we can have you on the tug. Or if you didn't make the presentation list at TC and you've got a presentation, you can do that as well. Okay, fast five. So 5 questions for Felicia, just rapid fire questions, rapid fire answers, just to get your take on things as well. You ready?
Let's go.
How many hours a week do you use Tableau?
Ooh, at least 20.
Cool.
At least
what is
20.
your favorite Tableau feature?
Oh, index. That's my favorite function.
Yep. What do you use to prep data for Tableau?
If it's quick and dirty, Excel. If it needs to be permanent, Tableau Prep or SQL.
Perfect. And what are your must-see sessions at TC25?
Speed tips. I'm also going to be doing speed tips, and the Tableau tip battle.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll be there. It's going to be really fun. I think we're all going to be wearing Aloha shirts. So try and check it out if you're there.
Perfect. And the last one, what is your favorite Tableau public viz that's not your own?
Oh, I like it when people break the bounds of what you can do with Tableau. So when they turn them into like little arcade games or board games or yeah, even if sometimes, we have limited performance, it's always fun to see somebody manipulating the boundaries of making it do something it wasn't designed for.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my answer to that question, because I'm not going to answer all the questions, is the first time I saw the Beatles viz. I can't even remember who did it. I think it was Adam, like a long time ago. And I just went, that's impossible to do that in Tableau. You download the workbook, you pull it apart, and you see how he did that. And like, just mind blowing. Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Awesome. So you'll find this recording on YouTube and on the podcast as well. If you don't know what that means, go onto YouTube and search for Team DataFam. And there's also podcasts on Spotify, Apple, etc. If you need to get in touch because you need any information about this presentation or you want to present, just email at team.datafam@gmail.com.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
No worries. Thank you for coming. That was the first one and it was really good. So I'll get this recording up as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Bye.